welcome to the first in the Push the Point Classic Battles series. We're going to be me and Simon. Simon is joining me today. Introduce yourself, Simon.
My name's Simon. I'm from Push the Point.
We're going to be casting my top 8 knockout fights. I'm playing as Katsu on the left, and Alex Chitu is playing Viserai on the right. I think this is definitely a classic matchup, and I'm not a well. I think I've played Katsu. I think this was my 8th game of Katsu in Classic Constructed at this point. So I'm a bit of a noob, but Simon is a Katsu expert, and he's going to explain to me everything that I did badly.
Expert might be a bit strong, but what we've got here is a classic aggro matchup, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out, because I haven't actually... Dan obviously played in the game. I haven't watched it all the way through. So I'll be interested to see who gets the better start. Who was the highest seed, Dan? Who was going first?
So I was the higher seed. I chose to go second.
Yeah,
I expected this to be a race. I was vindicated by seeing the crown being put down.
Yeah.
Assumed that Viserai also wanted to race. I did choose to run AB1 on my boots. It was either AB1 Tide Flippers or Breeze Rider boots.
Yeah,
because I was going second, I thought AB1 means I can just prevent arcane damage and not leak a bunch of damage turn 1.
I think AB1 on the Tide Flippers is the right choice. The only problem with letting Viserai go first is letting him make some rune chants. And here, obviously, he's played Spellblade Assault, making 2 rune chants and pushing some damage. He's not worried about go again at this point. He wants to arsenal a card and bank those 2 rune chants for next turn.
But I was actually quite happy to see an attack here, because as you see, I block with 2 blues.
Yeah.
I had a pretty average opening hand, and I was quite happy to be able to mulligan those 2 cards away. I was more worried by...
I'm assuming you had more blues in hand, because it's nice to have those blues set for next turn.
Yeah, I have about... I think I've got... I can't remember if I've got another one, if it was a 3 blue hand or not. We'll probably see in a second. But
the Crown of Dominion is a relatively new addition we're seeing to Viserai as well. Obviously, it gives you the chance with the gold from the beginning of the game. It gives you the chance for big hands with cash in, possibly 6 or 7 card hands. So I'd be wary of that. I know you've given him the go first, but it is going to be a race from here on in.
Yeah, and I thought I was like, oh, how good can it be? It ends up being pretty good. But I have a pretty decent opening here. Yeah, I think I kept the Soul Bead from turn 1, maybe.
Nice. And we've got a yellow Surging Strike.
Soul Bead and Surging Strike in hand from turn 1, so I knew I was able to start with Surging. Only a yellow one, but
are these whiteboarded cards, Dan? Are you playing with whiteboarded cards?
I played a lot of whiteboard. I've got whiteboarded Katsu. I've got whiteboard Kodachis, but I couldn't get my whiteboarder Katsu in time. So I like a bit of whiteboarder.
Nice history pack.
But yeah, I wanted to make some decision points for Alex really early. Like, does he choose to block this out to prevent the Katsu trigger and start to get rid of his equipment as quickly as possible? I'm really keen to get rid of his equipment block as quickly as I can, because then I start to put on a lot more pressure.
Obviously, with playing the Crown of Dominion, he's only got 4 equipment block, which is usually he'd have 6 with the Crown of Providence, maybe. But it is nice. They're all battle worn, so he can use those. And as you see, he's gone straight for the block to stop that Katsu trigger, blocking out 4 for the yellow Surging Strike. I think a Spinning Wheel Kick's a good card to have in your deck. But there's a school of thought, an old school of thought, that says you just let the first Surging Strike through and then block the second card. But I think he's done the right thing. He's read you quite well here. He's stopped the Katsu trigger, and it meant he's only taken 4 damage. He's now got a 3-card hand plus an arsenal to come back at you.
And it ends up being in my opinion, a pretty weak turn. for going second. I mean, I pushed 4 damage, but I would have liked to have done a lot more there.
I was going to say, it's less that you've
8.
pushed 4 damage, more that he's let 4 damage through to come back with a big
Yeah.
turn. I think,
and we'll see how I think he just basically he goes for a standard Viserai play here.
lead the charge.
A big
Amplify
a lot
the
of rune
Arknight.
chance. Yeah.
So Amplify's coming in, cost 1 there for 6 damage and 2 rune chance. It's obviously reduced cost for every rune chant in play, and he makes another rune chant for playing a Runeblade card after a non-attack action. So he's coming in for 8 damage over 2 sources, and he's got to go again from the lead the charge, or another action point, should I say, from lead the charge. He's got resources floating. I'd imagine
right here because he's essentially using 3 cards here and he's pushing 15 damage.
It's crazy. Another 5 damage with the Rosetta here.
Oh, sorry, 13 damage. Just from 3 cards. So he's able to block out my Katsu trigger on the previous turn and then push 13 damage, and he doesn't even use his arsenal to do that. So really, really good turn in comparison to what I was able to do with 3 cards, because I obviously arsenaled at the end of my turn where I only pushed 8 damage.
So you're looking at your graveyard here. I'm wondering if you've got bonds in hand or a descendant and then bonds in hand. You're looking at which you're going to be able to
I managed to get into the surging, and you have to think to yourself, if he's checking the grave, does that mean that he's got the bonds in hand, or he's thinking I'm able to play the bonds out? So I pitched the Lord of the Winds, and we'll actually see this turn is a semi decent turn, but we'll let it play out and we'll explain why it isn't quite as effective as I'd like it to be.
So it's another yellow surging. It could be another 1 card and equipment block if he's feeling cagey about it. But again, he's probably setting up a big hand to come. He's had that same card in Arsenal for 2 turns. If that's me playing Katsu, I'm starting to wonder what's going on. He's not played the card out. Complete stoicism on Dan Tripp's face here. He's not giving anything away.
What a handsome chap there. Clearly caught the sun when he was in Paris 2 weeks ago. He's starting to get that nice early summer tan there. But yeah, I think again the surging yellow here for 4. It's basically almost as good as 5 unless he's got the sync, because he's probably going to grasp
are still up.
Block it. I wouldn't use my Spellbound Creepers. We'll see how the Spellbound Creepers are used later, and we'll talk about that too. But yeah, this is just classic Katsu stuff. It's do you block this? But now that I've put a card into Arsenal, Alex is probably thinking, well, he's probably Arsenaled a combo piece, so maybe he's got a much higher chance of having the whelming. In which case, I really want to block the.
So I think the key as a Katsu player here is that you're presenting damage with the surging, you're presenting the Katsu trigger with a card in hand, and you've also got the card in Arsenal. So you potentially have 2 out of 3 combo pieces already, like you say, but you're crucially giving yourself the option of triggering Katsu by having a card in hand, and your opponent doesn't know whether that's a 0 cost or not. You have to maybe play as if it is a 0 cost. It really depends on Alex's hand here. He's taken the damage. I would suggest that's going to signal he's coming back with a 5-card hand, unless you really threaten. And if you are going to Katsu here, which you are triggering now, then I'd imagine you go and get the Descendant, and you've got the bonds.
We discard the Crane Dance here. I am actually running a slightly spicy build. I run red Crane Dance and try to pull off the Find Center combo, which is something I was really hoping to be able to do against Alex early, because not early, because a Zen State token, you might be able to get it over with Breaking Scales, but it is incredibly effective against Viserai. But it's not the time for it. I just swap the Crane Dance for a red Whelming Gust Wave. And I think I've actually got the Megenshis in Arsenal. A little bit of a spoiler here. But unfortunately, it's a bit early in the game for Megenshi Lord of Wind to actually. You
don't have anything in the graveyard apart from 1 Surging Strike. You don't have anything else to go and get. But that being said, it is So this is 4+4+5 off of 3 resources. So again, that's not to be sniffed at.
Yeah, this is a pretty good turn considering it's just 4 cards. I used a blue on the previous turn to prevent a bit of arcane
Yeah.
damage. And then Alex, yeah, playing sensible here. He's preventing the potential scales, going over the top of
Yeah.
scales. I mean, it's just a normal block for him.
Well, he's preventing a number of things. He's preventing the card draw from the whelming. He's preventing the Mask of Momentum trigger, and then he's just got 5 plain damage to deal with, really, because you're not gonna. You've got a Lord of Wind in pitch, so you've only got 2 to go and find, and then you've only really got 1 target left to go and get in graveyard. So this is 5 damage plus another 3 damage from Lord of Wind if you so choose to go and get it.
But what I actually choose to do here is that I decide to take 2 Lord of Winds, but I actually decide to not combo the Lord of Wind. I decide to go Kadachi Lord of Wind to put on another pressure to try and spread another mask trigger. And that actually causes an interesting block from Alex that we'll see in a second. But
You're giving us some spoilers here, Tripp. You're giving us some spoilers.
It's a little bit of a spoiler, but this is too early in the game to be really... I don't really want to be doing the Megenshi combo line. I would much rather be playing a Bonds with even anything. Even if I'm fetching a 2-power combo, just hitting for 6 off a 0 Bonds, I would rather be doing...
That being said, though, the Megenshi in Arsenal is a good choice no matter what comes up the next turn. I think even if you've got a Megenshi in Arsenal as Katsu, you can take a blue, pitch Kadachi Megenshi for 4 off of one card and 1 card in Arsenal. So I don't think that's a bad turn if it means you're blocking out on hits from the opponent, and it can be quite a nice defensive reset. You're threatening mask, you're hopefully drawing a block on one of those cards, and I don't think that's a bad turn cycle if you've had to block the turn before. So arsenaling that card is not a bad option anyway. It's now good that he's let the Surging Strike hit. You've gone and found your Whelming, which offers a potential card draw, and then you've boosted 2 of your attacks by 1 just by playing the playing the combo
thing
line.
to remember here is that this was a 4-card hand. I used the cards so 4, 4, 5. We're already presenting 13 damage. We're going to present another 4, 17 when I use one of the Lord of Winds to pitch the Kadachis. But I'm not setting up an Arsenal, and Alex is quite clever to prevent the mask draw. Because the Arsenal is what then allows my next turn to be really strong. And by not getting a mask draw this turn, again, I'm giving up loads of spoilers because I've played this game, but we'll see how it plays out. But I think it's really important to keep developing an Arsenal and keep having really strong 5-card turns.
And that's key for Katsu. Having more cards in hand is crucial. What I'm seeing though is Alex being quite defensive of his hand and the resources he's got available to him. So he's happy for the raw damage to come through. And I think that's a reasonable thing when actually Viserai can brick. Viserai does need the cards and the resources to make the plays he wants to play. I think this is canny. I think this is a good start to the game from Alex. And let's be honest, he's a Viserai expert himself. He has played this deck at a high level for the last year or so and done really well with it.
Yeah. And so the reason why Alex is taking so long with this Kadachi is because he knows that this is the second in a row on a mask trigger. And I actually end up forcing the block from the boots, which actually then allows me to use my second Kadachi, because if he hadn't have done that, I would have had to attack with Lord of Wind to get the mask trigger on 2, which would be he wouldn't be able to block with the boots.
So you've got an extra couple of damage through.
I can't say I'm upset about that turn. I got a block off the I think I got a block on the grasp as well, and I got rid of
10 damage.
And he took 10 damage off a 4-card turn. But I'm very sad that I don't, and this is why. He was defensive is because he had the cash in. And this is what really turns that turn that I had, which was a good turn. But now we're looking in the face of what could potentially be an incredible turn from Alex with a 5-card hand.
As
here,
you can see on
the
screen,
right
the cash in allows you to destroy 4 coppers, 2 silvers, or 1 gold, rather than pay the cost of 4 on the card, and it gives you a 2-card draw, which is just incredible. When you start with that gold in play because of the Crown of Dominion, it's an incredible boon to a Viserai hand. Now he's coming in with a red Movrian Skies, which gives your next Runeblade attack action go again, and if it hits, make 3 rune chance. He's coming in with a Spellblade Assault red, which is 4 damage, make 2 rune chance. So
yeah, I was going to say the best part, well, one of the best parts about cash in Viserai is it activates Viserai. It's a non-attack. So, but the other thing here is that I was quite happy to see the Spellblade Assault. I love when Viserai players put their Morvarin Skies on a 4 power card, because I do have the Breaking Scales. It's a pretty easy equation to 3 block and Breaking Scales. I've only got 1. I've only really got the Breaking Scales that I can block with, but this is probably the best possible use I could get out of that 1 block. I'm preventing essentially 4 damage with it.
This is an interesting extension of the play, because Swarming Gloomveil, he's already made the 3 auras, the 3 rune chants that he needs to get the maximum amount of swarming, which is now coming in for 4 with Go Again, plus 3 rune chants. And if it hits, you can't stop any more arcane damage this turn. Not that you particularly be interested in that as Katsu, but another 7 damage. So he's coming in for 5 plus 7. This turn is going a little bit big now.
Yeah, so this is, I'm thinking I've committed my block now.
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to block anything else. So I'm not really worried about the swarming unpreventable. What I was worried about is that his card in hand might be Revel in Runeblood. I was thinking that's going to be pretty backbreaking. Fortunately,
it's not.
I don't think it is, because he chooses to Arsenal it.
He's not had
and I have to say, considering that was a cash-in turn, I take a lot of damage. Don't get me wrong, but I could be less happy. It was a big turn, but it could have been a lot worse than what it was. Imagine
you've managed to come away with a 3-card hand, which is more than you thought you were going to end up with.
But it's not quite enough, I think. This is why I was really sad about not being able to get a card in Arsenal from a Master or on the previous turn, because I need to do I can push a bit of damage here probably, but really I want to be developing that Arsenal.
Well, like you said,
in order to have a 5-card hand, and I can't really do that without giving up a lot of pressure here.
Like you said, you're trying to strip this equipment from Viserai as early as possible, and he has made his way through 90% of his equipment in the first 2 turns, but then you need to be able to push and come back with those 5-card hands, which you've not been able to do just yet. 100 wins is a good start to the turn. It asks them for a block. It's eligible for a Breaking Scales activation if you really want the combo chain to come alive, but I think it just asks a block or 3 damage.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because he's probably thinking he's got the Breaking Scales, he's got cards like Ancestral Empowerment. We're going to see we'll see what he does here. Again, it feels like an easy 3 block for Viserai. Viserai's very happy playing with less than 4, less than 5 cards. Does he decide to throw the Grasp of the Arknight on this? Probably not. Probably wants to keep that for a Whelming Gust Wave at some point. And
I think playing it out first might indicate to your opponent that you've got a hand of all reds, because you've not come in with Kodachis first, or you're trying to draw that block, or you're trying to activate Katsu first with an easy combo card to start the chain. I can imagine now you might come out with a Picture Blue, Kodachi, Snatch for 4 or something similar, or you've got that all red hand. There you go.
Yep, it was an all red hand. And the decision point here for me was, do I Breaking Scales on the 100 wins and fetch
another 100 wins?
A Winds of Eternity or another 100 wins? it's a pretty awkward one. I'm not going to lie to you, Si.
It's not the hand you would want right now.
No.
I can see why you didn't stop any rune chance on the previous turn.
Yeah.
It has drawn some blocks, so it does maybe indicate that his hand wasn't as strong as he would like either.
Yeah. When I saw him going for the block here, I was
You were
I
happy.
was like, how I can't believe he's going for the block. I don't think he ends up committing it. But
the fact
this was
he's
what I was
thinking
thinking.
about
I was like, the way I'm going to win this game is with a 5-card hand.
Yeah.
I can't. I've got to get a card in Arsenal here.
Yeah.
He's probably thinking.
Well, Steel for speaks in the background.
Doing? Yeah, Steel for speaks in the background.
Oh,
there he goes.
So I think, as you say, the fact that he's considering this block probably means that his hand isn't what he'd like. I think as a Katsu player, this is always good. Every card I play as a Katsu player is to try and draw a block from the opponent in a sense. If they don't block, it gives me the chance to Katsu. If they do block, it gives me the chance to come back at them, maybe Arsenal a card at the end of turn, and come back with a bigger turn next time. So
what I really wanted there was a blue in order to go to put the thing I struggled with this matchup was forcing blocks from the Musk.
Yeah,
I wasn't able to get the strings of attacks in the way I would like to do so.
You had 3 blues in the first hand as well. It's difficult when your blues come in clusters like that to be able to get that consistency of Kadachi, go again.
So we see an interesting turn here from Alex, which and he's umming and ahhing about.
He's been thinking about it a while.
And you have to think maybe he's not got the greatest hand because he was considering that block on what was just essentially.
So it looks like he's got a Rattlebones in Arsenal, and I'm wondering here whether he's thinking Rattlebones into Swarming Gloomveil, which is in his graveyard. So by doing that, you've got the non-attack action you need to trigger Viserai, but you pay 2 for it. It's an expensive one. You're then getting rid of a card to go and get the Swarming, which has go again because you're just about to make a rune chant with it, and then obviously coming in for another 4 damage. Plus a rune chant from your Rosetta.
Is these two cost non-attacks. They do enable Rosetta so well, and it's like when your blues are representing normally 5 damage with the rune chant.
Yeah, absolutely. It's
not
crazy.
Sad. We can only manage 2 damage with our blues.
Yeah.
So
he's going to pitch his blue duet.
And he's going to make a rune chant.
He's thinking really hard about it.
To get these. He's going to make a rune chant so that he gets the +1 on the Swarming when he plays the Rattlebones
yes, of course. Yeah.
So he is going to pitch 2 cards here in order to do this.
Yeah.
I think he's going to use Aether Ironweave at some point, but we'll see him play. Yeah, he's got to read the runes, which is pretty awkward.
It's a shame he didn't have his creepers still left, isn't it? But now
he has no resources remaining now. He's pitched or to make a rune chant, play Rattlebones. And that's why he maybe thought about blocking with the runes.
I wonder whether he's given up too much with the... he could use the Aether Ironweave, I guess. It's getting to that point in the game where that's
he's still presenting 10 damage this turn.
Yeah.
And that's why he probably thought... he probably should have blocked Read the Runes, because I'm pretty sure he ends up popping Aether Ironweave just to swing Rosetta here. So he could have potentially just saved 2 damage, being on 23 instead of 21. But it's an interesting one.
However,
I think Aether here.
He does get 9 damage off in 1 turn.
And look at me. I've put my cards down on the table. I'm clearly not blocking. I'm like, can I deal 21 damage in 1 turn? Yeah.
I'm hoping that you have enough to get through some damage.
Well, Simon, we're gonna see that.
I'm
see what went wrong very, very shortly.
It's coming up to that time in the game. Like he's got a life lead of 9 right now. Well, more than 9, 14 now. So this has got to be your big turn. You've got to either force all of his cards out of his hand, or
Well,
get a
I'll tell you
Mars
what I've
trigger.
got. I'll tell you what I've got, Simon. I've got an Art of War in the arsenal.
Right.
I've got 100 wins. I've
Yeah.
got a Ancestral Empowerment. I've got an E-Strike, and I've got a fourth card that I can't remember at the moment.
Okay.
And the idea is,
So you're
somehow I'm going to draw a card.
You're going to 100 wins.
And I have to get either and try and get a blue so I can play Art of War. But what happens really throws me off is I don't draw a blue, and we'll see in a second. So I play the 100 wins out, I think.
That's reasonable.
I can use this to get my the other card in hand, is a Descendant Gust Wave.
Okay.
But currently I lack the Surging. But I think, I can always just play a Descendant off the blue, fetch a Bonds, try and do some clever stuff.
So I'm imagining he's going to block this one, and you're going to go 1 over with the Ancestral. That would be a good result.
That's the plan. And even if he blocks 4, I've got the Breaking Scales as well. So I've got it completely covered in terms of getting, not completely covered, but he doesn't have the 2 block left on grass. If he 2-card blocks this, I'm still really happy.
And you have the 0 cost in. You have the 0 cost in hand with the Enlightened Strike as well. So,
and this is what happens. This is what goes wrong. Is I don't draw a blue. I draw a red Surging Strike.
Okay.
And that makes me start thinking too much.
So
I start thinking,
you've now got.
I don't have a blue, but I have my Heart and Cross Strap. So I'm going to use
you've now got
that.
a Surging and a Descendant, and you could have got rid of the E-Strike and gone and got your Bonds, which would then give you access to another 100 wins in your deck, or a Fluster Fist if you run it.
Basically, I can deal. I think it's something like, so I'm about to deal 4 damage, take him down to 17,
and then you'd be
Surging
5, 4,
12. Descendant down to 7, Bonds down to 3, and then 100 wins down to 0. So with the Breaking Scales, I do force a card block from hand, and I've got Mar. But the trouble is I get too fixated on playing the Heart and Cross Strap, and I forget to
activate Katsu. So for those who aren't used to playing Katsu,
which is disastrous.
Katsu's trigger is on the first attack action to hit this turn. So Dan Tripp has now missed that trigger by playing the Heart and Cross Strap.
Which is basically cost me 7 damage.
Minimum 7 damage.
Because I can't even play the E-Strike. I can't play the Descendant and the E-Strike, which is really, really bad.
And now you can't even Mars Trigger because you haven't got enough.
So Alex asked to read Katsu, and this is where I realized I'd made a mistake. I knew that it was the first attack, but I just forgot to play it because I thought I need to play the Heart and Cross Strap out to get the Surging, and that's when I missed my trigger.
So running that play again, the Descendant for 5 would have been the Bonds for 4 would have been the Mars Trigger because you've reset the chain with the Heart and Cross Strap.
And that's when he'd probably commit the Grasp and a card from hand, but I've still got the Breaking Scales up, so it's actually very awkward for him. It's not an easy, and it was game losing. I think it would have been enough pressure to force at least 2 cards out of Alex's hand at some point. Because the next cards he let the 100 wins hit, but I broke the chain, so that doesn't matter. The Surging comes in for 5.
He's let that hit.
The Descendant comes in for 5. Does he block the Descendant with 2 cards, and then I go Bonds 100 wins probably? So he's sort of wasting 2 block. So he's probably committing 2 cards this turn basically, if I'd done it correctly.
So I think if you go and get the Bonds, I think he overblocks the Bonds. Because that's your 2-card block. And he knows you can't get a Dishonor because it's not in graveyard.
But it's all a moot point because unfortunately this is where you need your reps, and that's where you need to practice. Need, even when you're doing something awkward, like, this is a great use of Heart and Cross Strap to break the chain, Heart and Cross Strap to get the Surging. You've got to order it correctly. You've got to do the Katsu before the Heart and Cross Strap.
shortcuts and sort of missed triggers like this can be really important. And I think this is where playing on something like Talishar can be really tricky, because it does all the triggers for you. You don't have to remember. And playing in person is just such a better experience overall. But you have to know the game and you have to play cleanly to get everything out of these turns. You've left him with a 5-card hand here, and he starts with a Mordred and a Movrian. This is bad. Like, this is bad when it starts.
Because the thing was, Si, is that if I'd managed to draw the blue with the Ancestral, I'd be playing the Art of War out, banishing the East Strike, drawing two.
I don't think it even comes down to the blue. I think the Art of War can stay in Arsenal. That's not a problem. You've left 8 damage on the field, and he's on 7 life. Like, he would have had to block with a card, if not more, to stop the Mars trigger. So
I think he probably would just then keep the blue, and he's probably got something in Arsenal that enables him to do a big turn. It's always going to force a few cards from me.
He had the Movrian, so even if he blocks with the Mordred and the Spellblade, if the card in Arsenal is an attack action, he's coming in for lethal.
And I've got a really terrible hand here as well. So you can see I'm blocking quite heavily. I've got a Bonds and a Megenshi. I've got an Art of War in Arsenal. It's a bit awkward at this point. He's pushing a lot of damage.
This is coming in for 9 just off of 1 resource.
But yeah, you're right, Si. It's practice and knowing the order, and that's kind of what we're trying to do with these, is to just show, like, these are the sort of things you just got to remember to keep track of. Oof. Pretty awkward. I basically know I've lost the game at this point. I wasn't too triggered by the mistake. I was like, okay, I'm still gonna go for it. I still think I've got a chance, because everyone knows Viserai can occasionally brick. I am now on 1 health, so it's pretty tough.
Any Rosetta activation now is game over, right?
Well, a single blue is always forcing a 2-card block from me at this point with Rosetta Rune Chant, but I think this is going to be the final turn. Alex has the audacity to follow up with another Mordred.
Look at him go. And
another Mordred Skies. So I know I'm pretty screwed at this point. But that just shows how quickly it can change. Like, that one mistake did completely end the game. And I think that's real credit to when you're playing against someone like Alex, who we've had on Push the Point, who's plays Viserai so incredibly well. You cannot make a mistake, because he is not going to make a single mistake.
Well, you both knew that was the crux turn. You had your 5-card hand. You went down to 12 or to 7, sorry, and then he knew that he had to survive the next turn and pressure you back, and you had the hand to do it with the Ancestral. But you had to think on the fly, and it distracted you from your initial plan. And
you've got to focus on you need to focus on your triggers and not get lost on thinking about how you're going to change your plan. But I think it says so much about Katsu, right? Is that Alex was on 21 health, and I still knew with the right draws I could actually force 2 cards from him.
Oh, absolutely.
He was on 21 health. That is actually mad. And it's great to play, but it was a fantastic game. And I mean, Alex is a Push the Point patron, so I did not feel bad at all. Very, very successful Viserai player. And I had an absolute blast playing Katsu. Like I was saying, not a huge number of... I don't play a huge amount of Katsu. I played a lot of Fi. It's completely different to Fi. It's a completely different kettle of fish.
And this is a really spicy last turn as well, because he's played Deathly Duet, pitching a non-attack action. So it's come in for 4 with 2 Rune Chants, and then made another multiple Rune Chants. That's crazy. What a great way to finish the game.
I absolutely loved playing against Alex, and got to do better next time, but felt pretty comfortable. And thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for our first classic battle. I can't believe we chose a game where I lost, but I did think it was probably the most interesting game.
That's an intense look into the camera there. I think, again, it shows you the depth of both of those heroes, and we know that both can brick, but we also know when they get into full flow, they can really get going.
It's the power of Katsu, right? Like,
Yeah.
it can look like there's an insurmountable life lead, and then suddenly you do bonds, you do crazy things. Yeah, and you can bring it back with Mask and Bonds and these crazy great new cards in Descendant Bonds and Dishonor, and even Spinning Wheel Kick has its place as just a slightly better leg tap in certain
So
situations.
let's wrap it up, Tripp. I want to thank everyone for joining us for our first in our series of classic battles. Please join us again next time when we commentate over some of our amazing stream games.
Yeah, next time we do one of my games, we're going to do one that I won. Right, that's the rule next time. One win, one loss.
You got to win some more, dude.
I'm going to win some more. Yeah, okay. I got top 8, whatever. Yeah. Okay, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.